So we're going to start the session as we usually do with a bit of a reflection. As you can see, there's two of us, so it will be an interview format, but we'll start with a reflection. As I go through the day, it is a wonder how easily I get caught up in the actions being performed. And within that, I'm very focused on outcomes. Sometimes, to such a great degree, I'm not even paying attention to the quality of my activity. Just focused on the outcome. But sitting here now, I can be more deliberate and intentional in paying attention. Attention to the very subtle aspects of action. Every external act, gesture, or deed begins with a thought. Thoughts are the seed of action. So let me just watch the movement of my own mind. The activity in my own mind. For just a few seconds, I am the observer of what's happening, the thoughts in my mind. Just watching the thoughts that move through the mind. What did I see? What are the quality of my thoughts, the themes of my thoughts, the stability of my thoughts? Thoughts are the foundation of my outer activity. So giving time, developing the skill to pay more attention to my inner movement, my inner activity, will greatly affect what I express outwards. And therefore what I create in the outer world. Om Shanti. The last time we had an interview, there had been a request for the law of karma, to look at karma. And I know there was some interest to explore it more, especially relative to the term we sometimes use as samskars, but relative to personality. How does personality shape my actions and therefore the consequences I create, but also how do the consequences, the results of those actions affect my personality? So seeing if we can explore a little more, really the importance, the deep importance of understanding the law of karma in our day-to-day life. So let's see where the interview takes us. And if you have questions, we're looking at YouTube, we're looking at Zoom, chat in either one. We'll pay attention and try to address those as well.
So it was a very lovely quest to do this exploration with karma. And I know Jay had mentioned that the request was specifically about karma and sanskars, but that word sanskars may not necessarily be meaningful for individuals, but personality. I don't even know if individuals ever thought there would be a connection between personality and karma. So what are your thoughts on that?
You know, you can put two people, and when we say personality, we're talking about something inside, internal. We can put two people into the exact same situation. The example I often use is, you know, the top of a tall building or giving a lecture to a crowd of 10,000. So you put two people in the exact same situation, and we notice that they have two very different reactions or responses. They act very differently. So we can't blame the situation because it's exactly the same for both. So this suggests that it's something going on inside who they are. We often say personality very much defines who we are, who they are, that is shaping their karma, their activity. So as we look at this in the Raj Yoga course, we get to really unpack this connection. But clearly who we are, and personality is really these, you know, how we express ourselves. Who we are is very much shaping how we act in different situations, and therefore the consequences we create, which can reinforce. So if I'm very shy, if I have a so-called shy personality, and you ask me to give a lecture to 10,000 people, right? And that personality takes over. And I get in front and I'm very awkward and very flustered, and I have this feeling of being very defensive, and I present in a certain way. It's going to create a very traumatic experience for me. My own presentation is creating a traumatic experience, which is only reinforcing my shyness. By what I'm putting out, I'm getting that response back, and it's only reinforcing that personality. So I continue to believe that I am shy. It continues to reinforce that presentation, that shyness. So it's pretty, and then that's of course shaping my life. So it's pretty powerful, the connection.
We may have touched on it last time we had an interview about karma, but karma is a really sensitive topic. It's a very it's a sensitive topic, but because we all have different perspectives of what it means, and so we are certainly looking through the lens of Raja Yoga. And one of the things about karma is a sense of a punitive sort of perception or a loss of control. From what you're sharing, though, in terms of personality and karma, I actually have choice. And that's kind of quite striking if we have these ideas of what karma means.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the law of karma, again, is neutral and suggesting that for every action or every seed, there's a consequence, a fruit. And so this is pretty powerful. If I want to start to transform what's happening in my life, and I know that it's through the lens of my personality that the actions are being performed that are producing those consequences. So if I want to change what's going on in my life, I now know I need to focus on self-transformation, right? Rather than trying to change the elements out there and I stay the same, right? So sometimes people say, I will move to a different place of work. but wherever I go, there I am, as Dr. Seuss once said. So the same dynamics start to emerge because I am the same. Now, it's not that I'm saying I reject myself. When we talk about self-transformation, what we're talking about is actually emerging the best of the self. This is how we want to show up in day-to-day life, is really making sure that we call it highest potential or best of the self is informing my activity. So it's very liberating because there's only so much controlling of the external that we can do, right? And right now, souls are really experiencing a loss of control over the external. But what I can control, the choice I can make is, okay, let me focus on care of the self. Yes, physics, yeah. So what was shared here, thank you, Philomena. What was shared from physics is that action causes reaction, vice versa. So changing an action changes a reaction that then changes a following actions and reactions. So yes, you're sort of breaking the chain or breaking the cycle, as we say. That's exactly what we're talking about. But so often we've looked at, we've sort of said, and you use the word reaction, which I find one of those powerful words. So the law of karma asks us to explore the difference between response and reaction. So a reaction means reaction, that I perform the same action, I repeat the same action I've always done in the face of that stimuli. And this is really getting into what sanskars are about. So if we, for example, said the color pink right now, you immediately all have another thought come into your mind. It might be bubble gum, it might be bubble gum, whatever color, whatever word or thought or feeling immediately came into your mind when the word pink. So this is a demonstration of sanskars, is that I have experienced different past experiences with the color pink. And so they inform my reaction to that color. So when that color, I'm exposed to that color, I have that reaction. It really triggers the same action. So in that case, I'm operating from the outside, and the stimuli is determining how I present. This is what a reaction is. A response is the exact opposite. Response, ability. That's what the law of karma explores. So I have the ability to respond. It means that I have, regardless of what's going on outside, I will respond according to my core values or my highest potential or my true self. So for example, the example I was given when I first came to the study is someone who is truly a loving being, a loving personality, and the soul is, every human soul is loving. But again, we've disconnected. This is the transformation. We want to reconnect with our true nature, true personality. So a truly loving person is equally loving to every single being. It's not a reaction, it's a response. I show up as who I am. I am not controlled by the outer stimuli. That's a response. So this is what law of karma is really exploring. So I want to break that chain, if you will, of reacting and start responding from my true nature.
So one of the things that comes up is about, does this mean that it excuses the behaviors of others, personalities of others? There seems to be a missing piece, that I need to focus on myself. Someone is performing actions or something a certain way, but how do you help understand this aspect of what my original self is and this aspect of being able to respond versus react?
Yeah, I thought the beginning of your question is really important, because we want to start to, rather than this merciless feeling around the law of karma, we want a merciful feeling around the law of karma, a compassionate feeling. And it is this word understanding that, it's really giving me an understanding, so that if someone is presenting a certain way that we might perceive as challenging, and I'm struggling not to react, if you will, what we often will go to is be very judgmental about the way that person's presenting. And we'll even go so far as say, karma will get them. They're not being very nice. Karma will get them. I'm like, okay, this is just not merciful at all. But now we're moving into a place of understanding, which is very merciful. We don't want anyone to suffer. We don't want anyone to suffer. Right? We do understand the law of karma, and we do understand that the suffering now is the product of our own activity. But we want to understand what happened to us. Our karma's changed over time. What happened? So I want a lot of understanding married. So now I understand how my life is unfolding in this way. I now understand where the power lies in that self-transformation. So now I cannot disconnect the law of karma from, given that it's seated internally, my personality. I now want to have lots of understanding. What happened to my personality? Like, what happened to me? That my actions, my personality changed, and so my actions changed over time, and therefore the outcomes, quality of life changed. I want to understand. And if I do, I will be understanding towards others as well. Rather than merciless, I will be merciful. So we want to marry the conversation around karma with a conversation around what we call dharma, right? Our true nature, our true beliefs, our true way of showing up. And then what happened to that story over time? So we say, as our dharma corrupts, and in Raj Yoga, we don't separate dharna and dharma. So dharna loosely, very loosely translates as personality. And dharma is really a way of life, a religion, our duty. So some might say, our roles, our religion, and they became separated over time. So only for an hour in Sunday school am I acting well-behaved, because I'm in a religious place right now. But the rest of the week, anything go. So the idea of, that's very odd. So first we marry back together dharma and dharna. But this dharna, when that starts to go, then the karma also goes. So I want to understand the story, the journey of my personality over time. I was very real, authentic, the eternal qualities, the intrinsic goodness was natural. And then what happened over time? Because we want to sort of separate karma from punishment, shame, guilt, and the word responsibility from blame. And the only word that can do any of that is understanding. So we want lots of understanding when we're dealing with the law of karma.
What does the soul need to understand within themselves when there isn't that capacity to be merciful because there's so much hurt, for example? And so what is it they need to understand in terms of this aspect of one's sense of self and what it really means when you just continue to propagate this merciless attitude towards others and self, because it feels like they might at that point in time might not be able to even try to reason what's happening out there.
I think always patience, time is always a huge part. And part of this conversation assumes that the person from my own side, I have an interest in looking at transformation. There has to be that interest. We can't even have this conversation with someone who's not even interested in transformation, at looking at that personal responsibility. So that we sort of already have to be on that page. Once I'm on that page, I need to respect, we're dealing with some fairly deep-rooted dynamics within the self. This isn't going to happen overnight. So there's this sort of, when I remember one soul came first to the center, and they were in a male body, and I mention that only because sometimes we're socialized certain ways on the basis of our package. But I remember they came and we were just chatting one-on-one, and they asked me, and they were very, very open, interested in transformation. They're now a very committed student of Raj Yoga, but very open to transformation. So they were on the page and they asked me, what's the one thing I need to focus on to move forward? And I looked at them and the feeling, I don't think I had anything in my mind, but this thought came into my mind. So we always say there was divine intervention, was learn how to be a mother to the self. You know, this is an organization that puts the mothers in front. We need to be firm, we need to be disciplined, we need to be intentional, but never violent and never impatient. So, you know, mothers are wonderful. They discipline, they nurture, you know, they have a firm hand, but there's always that respect and love. Learn to be a mother to yourself. If you really want to move along in a path, any path of transformation, yes, it's great to have enthusiasm. I want to do this. I'm ready to do this. I'm excited to do this. But you will need so much patience and understanding to sustain yourself on this journey. So it will take time. And part of that is just learning to call it detached observer, learning to watch myself with an attitude to understand. This is detached observer. It's like, oh, there I go, being very judgmental again about everybody and their dog. Yep, there I go again, being judgmental. And I'm almost entertained. It's like, I know this isn't, so there's big faith in the self. I know this isn't my true nature. I understand I went on a journey that I landed up in this state. That's okay. I know it's going to change because I'm very enthusiastic and committed. So I'm not going to judge myself for judging others. I'm not interested in judging others, but I can't seem to stop at the moment. But now I have the tools. And if I work with the tools faithfully and patiently, I know I will see transformation. Lots of honesty.
Certainly feels like timing is a part of it. But, and I only mention this piece because it feels very relevant. I do work at the Chronic Pain Center, and a lot of the physicians have mentioned that patients who are actively going through a litigation, their outcomes are usually not very good because they're basically requested to justify that wrong has been done to them. So one of the things that does come up with this aspect of personal responsibility is like, some say, I feel like a victim still, like I justify someone else for their actions and I'm being asked to change. So again, this aspect of self-respect, what is it that one is not understanding, or is it just that that's just the way ego operates and one just needs to be a detached observer?
The beauty of Raj Yoga is it comes in the package, and we identify the tools in two main categories. We're talking about one of those categories right now, which is knowledge, understanding, and the other one is yoga. And we have to have both happening. And our big propensity is knowledge, 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 knowledge. Even now, it probably just sounds like it's knowledge, knowledge, because we're just talking about it. And so we love to go into the knowledge. But for this really to take off powerfully, there's got to be the yoga going on as well. This yoga is liberating me. You mentioned one of the words just now, from ego, but liberating me from a bunch of forces inside that are severely distorting my behavior and even how well I can understand. So I won't show everyone this because it's a little bit frightening, although I personally feel it looks like now like a tattoo. But I recently had, thank you, Philomena. Before I go into that, a tremendous amount of energy used when judging oneself or others could become heavy. Sorry, is there more? Oh, I just got it. Could become heavy. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is it's such a drain of our precious energy, you know. But I remember there's this incident recently where I went into a situation and something went a little bit sideways, according to drama, according to the law of karma, if you will. And so I landed up with an injury. And I could literally, it was so interesting, the voices that went through the head. One was, well, this person did that. So looking at what other people did to cause this injury. And to the point I thought, I bet you if I told someone about this, I'm pretty sure at least one person would say, you should go sue them. I'm pretty sure. At least one person would say that. And I remember feeling inside, there was absolutely no desire to go after them or anything like that. There was an understanding. The situation didn't arise accidentally. Nothing arises. We're not a victim of life circumstances. It's all beautifully orchestrated based on the law of karma. And it's not that I felt, that I was being punished or anything. It was like, this is going to send me into a direction of learning, of progress. To have such loving feelings for all the souls involved in this scene, and to consistently move forward with what can I learn from this scene? So sometimes we think, now the only way that we're going to have those kinds of feelings, and this is why I'm talking about yoga, those kinds of feelings is if we're having yoga. One is to have an understanding, the knowledge. So I can have, okay, I know this is what Rajyoga tells me, but I feel very differently. Emotionally, I'm still very upset and disturbed. I know I think this way intellectually, but my feelings, so we've got these two different things going on, the emotional, and then we've got these sort of thoughts based on knowledge. And this is a huge way of how we could try and move along. But if I'm doing both knowledge and yoga, I have the knowledge is informing my thoughts, but my feelings are able to keep up as well. From my heart
nature because of
yoga. Because of the yoga, my heart is actually able to keep up with my head. I don't want my head running over here and my heart, which is really the powerhouse, is kind of back here, having emotional upheaval. I really want them to keep up together. So I need to be having both going on. So someone can say, I know I'm supposed to take responsibility in this situation. I shouldn't blame anyone. But inside I'm like, I'm really upset with these people. And I certainly don't have love for them. So I'm back to the reactivity. I'm back to staying in the same cycle, right, of being the victim. So it's really important to be doing some sort of practice that is caring for the heart, not just the head, but the heart. So we have knowledge and yoga. And the yoga is really, when we say the heart, I think of the heart as the way I always phrase is the keeper of my most noble ideals. It has a memory of my highest nature, highest potential, my true nature. My true nature. So I want to be nurturing that while also, if you will, in drawing out the innate wisdom that's within every soul. Every soul deep down does truly understand the law of karma, so that you never sort of can break free from this cycle. And just, the way I heard one person describing it was, I was in an apartment and they had a bottle of oil and by accident tipped over and all the oil went flooding everywhere, down by the edge of the stove. And I mean, just places that are impossible to reach. This oil had gone. And when I arrived, they said, I'm moving. It's just easier to move than to try and clean this mess. That's just not really how it works. We know that, right? So we know that we do have to kind of clean things up. We won't feel good inside. We'll feel unsettled. So deep down, we know this. We want a clean heart. So how to get the tools, what practice to connect us to that.
We're just going to take a quick pause right now. If there's any questions or comments from souls on YouTube, on Zoom, you're welcome to unmute yourself and share, or you're welcome to type in the chat box as well. So
Go ahead.
Pauline has asked, how is positive affirmation related to good karma?
Mm. Yeah, so when I have heard about this idea of positive affirmation, um, and even affirmation is a karma, an activity. When we looked at the law of karma, we suggested that the law is very sensitive. We used the word intention first, but as we talked about it a little bit more last time, we suggested it's very sensitive to the purity of what we're doing. And so I actually prefer pure over positive. And I know it sounds like semantics. Positive has gotten so mixed up. It's a good word, and we want things to be positive, but we also want them to be pure, because it's gotten so mixed up over time with desires that I am saying something for a certain outcome. And the law of karma is very sensitive to that. So I could repeat to myself, and when we also say pure, we also are connecting it to truth. So let's say that I do a positive affirmation every day. I am a worthy person. I am a worthy person. I am a worthy person. And that's a beautiful, beautiful project. Absolutely. But let's say that I'm saying this to myself, but on another layer, there's still sort of what we call impure. I don't believe it. Subconsciously, I just don't believe it. So
Could the possibility that I'm just hoping that eventually it'll
sure, absolutely. The only way that I have been able to convince this subconscious stuff is with some other information. I need some really compelling information to convince me, to convince this other stuff sitting down here. That's a big one. That's probably the biggest one, to really recognize I am a worthy soul. It is, I personally feel it is the thing that is sort of controlling all of us, the unworthiness, and definitely coloring our karma. We are acting like unworthy people, right? So words create, thoughts create, then the concrete of those thoughts and words become, are. Yeah, absolutely. The subtlety is very powerful. We use the word concrete as a manifest, but actually subtle is far more powerful. That's where it all begins. Just like the seed underground. Can't see it, but wow, the effect it has on the tree that's above ground that manifests. So the subtle, when we go even deeper than words or thoughts in the study, we look at attitudes and consciousness. And I love this idea of the attitude. This is the primary karma, is what is my attitudes and consciousness around the self. I would much rather spend my time fixing the seed than on affirmations that are still kind of floating on the surface. I would much rather spend my time genuinely getting to that purifying that seed, those feelings towards the self, the attitudes towards the self, that to really get to the point where I understand I am a worthy soul. And it's a lot more than just repeating it to myself. I need some compelling information about myself to truly convince myself, recognize that at a very subconscious level.
I feel from what you're sharing and Pauline's question is, there are some elements of Raj Yoga that perhaps maybe for those who haven't taken the course are not aware of, but that Raj Yoga is looking at eternal truths, which is very different than seeing. I know it's, as Judy has mentioned, it's much more than just semantics when we use the word positive, but a sense of understanding that basically is irrespective of any changes or anything that happens in terms of scenes and situations and time. So this aspect of pure, how is that then related to karma? Like, wouldn't it change outcomes when it comes to just using positive affirmations versus pure understanding of myself.
Yeah. The law of karma is so sensitive to that pure, that level of purity. So if I am saying positive affirmations, but there isn't the purity as well there, the law of karma is going to be very sensitive to that. And you're going to say, wow, I was saying so many positive affirmations, and the law of karma is sort of like, yeah, but you weren't believing them.
Could it be possible to say I'm a soul, and not believe it, and actually be, so it's not really about the words as much as what is it I really actually accept at a deep level?
Absolutely. And I think the symbol that we use for the subject of knowledge in Raj Yoga is a chakra, a discus. And it's called the chakra of self-realization. That I really need to, it's amazing. My own story should not be a mystery. We say mystery, but it should be my story. But it's become a mystery. And in the sense, I don't actually know myself. And so I'm kind of having these affirmations, but meanwhile, all this stuff going on inside of the self, in some ways is sabotaging those affirmations. And I don't know it. I don't know myself. I don't know we say eternal. Yeah, that story through time, that overarching, that big picture. I don't really know myself. And that's the information. That's probably one of the most powerful karmas I can embark on is I want to know who I am. It's a very good use of my time and energy. I want to know who I am. It will dramatically change the quality of my karma when I understand myself.
Pauline has a further question regarding this is how about on a very unfortunate situation, but convincing yourself about something good will happen, just being hopeful, like for example, for someone who doesn't have the spiritual knowledge.
Absolutely. And I think this is the resilience of the soul. Absolutely. It's like hopeful thoughts, bright thoughts, positive. We know we've heard so many extreme stories about this type of thing, whether it's someone who might have a life-threatening disease or someone who is incarcerated or, in a detention camp or the Holocaust or whatever.
The mother who's trying to feed their baby.
Right. There's so many, absolutely, huge. I think what we're looking at isn't only just these extreme situations. It's a bit what I call under the category of random acts of kindness. Is I'm hoping, and the other piece is what will be sustainable over time, is yes, I got through this extreme situation with the positive thoughts. And then it's always shocking, kind of, if we had a special machine that could track the invisible, so we could really understand what we have created. That would be still one of the principles that we look at, the stories that we look at in Raj Yoga is there's a phenomenon that happens even today. It happens, but I think we've heard so many stories of this in the past where someone will be a devotee, a very, very, very intense devotee. They will do all sorts of asceticisms or extreme rituals out of love, in devotion to their chosen god or goddess, like a real devotee. So much so, then some might even seem occult, but they have a vision or something happens, stigmata or something happens, right? But they have a vision, which only reinforces their devotion. Look, I did intense devotion, and then I had this vision. So I will continue to do this devotion. So they continue to do that devotion, but then it doesn't work the next time. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. And what it's reinforcing is that deep belief that may not be based on eternal truths, but is sustaining them at that moment. And that's really how we've gotten through things so far. But we're reaching a point where I feel in the world around where we really have to sort this stuff out and start to introduce the truth into what we're putting our energy into. So, I could be in an unfortunate situation how did I get into this unfortunate situation? Did it just happen to me? How did I land up in this unfortunate situation? I can use those tools of a great attitude, etc., but it could be possible that I land up in another unfortunate situation because I never really understood what's driving my activity, how I landed up in that unfortunate situation in the first place. So I know this is when it feels like, wow, that's really harsh. But that's what we're exploring when we decide, okay, I really want deep transformation. And it's such a need of this time because there's so many calamities and things happening now to souls. And more we just sort of will use our positive thoughts, etc., but we'll never actually move into the truth and have our karmas informed by the truth rather than hopes or dreams. Or I want my karma now to be inspired by the truth.
Do you feel that because this is all about the aspects of Raja Yoga, that a really deep understanding of that first lesson of soul consciousness, the experience of that too is really important before you dive into or try to grapple with what law of karma is, because it does feel like there really needs to be a good sense of self to be able to see myself in certain situations. It's very easy, it feels like, to start to feel like a victim or start to get critical. And I think that for souls to understand even what self-respect is that critical, and being a victim is an antithesis of that. And I don't know if that's necessarily something souls understand necessarily, because when we think of self-respect, sometimes it's like I'm justified. I'm entitled to feel a certain way because of something that's happened to me. But it does feel like it's a journey of really what exactly is self-respect, not at a theoretical level, but at that level of experience, especially when you talk about knowledge in yoga.
Yeah, it's really, again, it's the readiness of the soul. But, I remember when I was young, and we have here in this city a special event, and includes a midway where there's lots of rides, the roller coaster, etc. And I remember being very, very young, and to get onto the roller coaster, there was a height requirement. Maybe because you might just slip underneath the safety bar. I'm not sure what, but there was a height requirement. So I remember being very young and I wasn't quite the right height. And I remember just, when will I be the right height? So there was a requirement to being able to get onto this ride and to really enjoy the ride. You had to be of a certain height. And I feel that way sometimes with spirituality, because there's really, this conversation again is for those who are really wanting to embark on some spiritual understanding and a transformation of self. And I feel that there's a bit of even though it's free and open to everyone, absolutely, but from our own side, there are a couple of entry requirements. One is timing, which we've talked about. I need to be ready to look at some new ideas. But the other one is soul consciousness, to really enjoy, to really take benefit from these spiritual ideas. I need to be, if you will, in a spiritual state of mind. And, that is so easy to miss that step. But what I will do with the information, if I am in a soul conscious or spiritual state of mind, is completely different. And I think a lot about the beginning of this organization and the first student, Brahma Baba, and his responses. There was a lot of, so many challenges and difficulties, so many, if you will, unfortunate situations. And the surprising way that he would respond, that you could tell, it was very different from worldly responses, but you could tell would really create a sustainable change. So I see something there.
On another note, as I listen, the beauty of karma is that one can and may change such by the change within. Shifts are possible, I am possible, and the rest will follow. And each being has their own path, even though related to others, micro or macro. As one's karma changes, thus will the karma of others. This is a ripple effect.
Yeah, this is such a deep principle. And we've heard that even as be the change you want to see, or as I change, the world will change. And, how's that going to happen? It's going to happen through the law of karma. Absolutely. When I start to respond differently, compassionately to souls around me, I am creating a forum in which they can operate differently. I remember a story a soul had told me. They were an actor, and when you're not acting, you're backstage in a place called the green room, and they had some bit parts and were understudied. So anyways, they were spending quite a bit of time in the green room, so they took up knitting. So they'd be back there in the green room knitting. I guess a lot of people wanted sweaters and baby clothes, so they were knitting a lot of beautiful stuff. And people would come up to them and start chatting away with them, and they'd keep focusing on their knitting, and they go every once in a while, and people just loved coming and talking to them. So there was one soul who, and I met this soul, so I know what they were talking about. There was one soul who just rubbed everyone in the company the wrong way. They came across as very arrogant and very kind of promoting, if you will. And this is the worst thing to do amongst a group of actors. But whenever they were with this soul who was knitting, they literally acted differently. This soul did not give off any vibes of being disturbed or judging, to the point that the soul who was bothering everyone else in the company, when they sat with the knitter, we'll call them, they say, the person who was confessing, it says, I don't know why, but when I'm with you, I'm so, like the way I act with other people isn't even me. I watch it and I see it happening, and it's like a train wreck. I don't even want to be this way around people, and I can see I'm annoying. But when I'm with you, it just feels different. And they're like, And what they just, by the end, the transformation was remarkable. Because at least there was one soul in that company, because their karmas, they were not reacting the same way everyone else did. So at least there was one soul in that company, because of the karma, they were, that being who was irritating everyone was able to be something different themselves, as they put it. I was able to be more than myself around the knitter. And what began to happen when everyone started to realize, and the knitter promoted this as well, sort of planted this thought in other people's minds, that the soul who was so bothersome to everyone, what everyone started to realize, yeah, but if you need someone, they will give you the shirt off their back. If you needed help, this soul will give you the shirt off their back. Everyone started to see them in a different way and started to interact with them in a different way. Like the chain reaction was amazing, just because they had one soul who allowed them to be themselves. They were so addicted to that other, we can say persona, which wasn't their true self. But when we're body conscious, we get stuck in all sorts of strange addictive behavior that is not our true self. But there was one soul, and this is why we say yoga, one being around whom I am my true self. And that one being is God. This knitter was not who eventually came into Raja Yoga, but this knitter was providing a very benign, non-judgmental space that felt safe enough for the authentic self to come out. And so they got the chance to see the other side of this person that nobody else got to see. This person who literally would give you the shirt off their back. But they didn't have to, because they were with the knitter. So the knitter, so they began to sort of plant, the other people would come and say, oh, this person was so irritating. And then they said, but have you noticed that, in that situation, they were doing this, I've actually experienced that they've been so helpful to me in this situation. So they started to plant different seeds of thought in people's mind because they had experienced something different with that soul. So it set in motion a totally different chain of events. So the chain reaction is huge. Oh, Om Shanti, bye-bye, Pauline. We are so close to being the end anyway. So we've gone over time. But it's very true, Philomena, that it's amazing the chain reactions. We're not just breaking the chain, the cycles of our own reactivity. But in doing so, we're providing spaces in which others can be liberated from their own reactivity. And this is when it gets super exciting. We're beyond positive affirmations at that point. We've changed into cycle breakers or world transformers. So that's super exciting.
I feel that's very refreshing that this is about cycle breaking. It's not about positive affirmations. And I know this has come up in conversations before about what am I using Raja Yoga for, but if I don't understand that, this is all about, there's an eternal sense of myself that's that has nothing to do with the roles, the situations, the past, then I'm going to try to use anything to try to make my day at that moment even at least a little bit more livable.
Yeah, so I think with your question, what it's inviting is a fork in the road. When I'm in a difficult situation, am I going to use my precious energy on positive affirmations, which will have results, it will get me through? Or am I going to use my energy on nurturing and cultivating a sense of self and seeing where that takes me? My introduction to Raj Yoga, not Raj Yoga, but to spirituality, really, this was well before coming to Raj Yoga in my teens. I've mentioned it many times, was reading this book by Viktor Frankl. Actually, I'll be honest, I didn't read the book. I read a page out of the book. And this page revealed in a second, it seemed, where the soul was coming from. So we have a soul who's in a very difficult situation. They are in a concentration camp. And within that context, how did they use their energy? They have very little energy to work with, physically, mentally, or emotionally. They're pretty low on all of those in that situation. So how will they use their precious energy? And this soul chose to use their energy. We say taking responsibility for it, but they chose to use it to nurture their self-mastery. A remarkable use of energy. And that's really, when I realized, my goodness, that's what spirituality is. And that's what the law of karma is looking at. Are you showing up in situations as your true self? So I could be doing positive affirmations and it will help me and still not be my true self. Meanwhile, the law of karma is looking at, are you showing up as your true, pure self? So that's really what we get to explore. It's inviting us to look, how am I using that precious energy in any situation? Am I checking my consciousness, checking my state of being and the attitudes? Like, am I showing up as my true self, as a soul, as a child of God? Am I showing up that way? And that's what it's sensitive to.
The last thought I want to share, I'm just looking at time. I'm actually quite amazed at how powerful understanding plays a role. I am seeing a physiotherapist, but what I noticed is that your physiotherapists tell you to do exercises, but you don't really have a reason. There's all sorts of different excuses and rationalizations. And to me, it reminds me of the study. There's a lot of old habits we have, and a lot of it is like feeling like a victim or feeling like criticism, a feeling of injustice. But when you have what you had just shared about, do I want to just cope with a situation, or do I want to really, understand and access my true self? Maybe it's, of course, someone's timing, but to me, it's like, you have a sense of broader understanding of what you want to choose. And sometimes we are kind of short-sighted, we can't see them.
I think so. And that's what I find so beautiful and brilliant, really, about Raj Yoga, is it's saying, basically, don't just survive, thrive. Saying, don't just, try to use karma to just try and make the best of the situation. You could create something beautiful in this situation. The soul, we underestimate ourselves so much because we've forgotten ourselves. So when I understand I'm a soul and the capacities of the soul, to say I, the soul, am a child of the Supreme Soul is no small thing in terms of capacity. So I can create so much beauty in very difficult, even difficult situations. So not just to cope or get through it, but to plant something beautiful. This is really transformation. This is what Raj Yoga is inviting, is that I can use the power of actions based on all of this internal work with knowledge and yoga. I can become a hero actor. Not just a reactor, not just an ordinary actor, a bit player, but I can become a hero actor. That is the invitation.
Thank you. I don't know. Well, it's a good idea to touch base if anyone has any questions. And
Gets
Hema,
the
I know
last
we
word.
just joined with us today, Hema. But if anyone has any questions or final comments, you're welcome to unmute yourself or type in the chat box. Everyone is very satisfied.
I think our hour is up. So yeah. Sorry, we don't actually provide tea at the Soul Cafe. So hopefully you bring your own. But thank you for joining. Have a lovely weekend. We'll just take 1 minute to reflection to close and water. Better. 1 minute of reflection to close, and then we will fly off into decorating our own lives, if you will. So one more time, sitting quietly, precious time to go inside, look at the state of my inner world. And whatever that state, it's okay. But I want to go right to the center of my inner world, the place where the ripple begins. At the very center is a sense of self. And at this moment, I see the self as a diamond, a beautiful jewel of life. All the facets are different aspects of my personality and my capacities. When I am pure, authentic, real, the jewel is perfect. All of the brilliance shines. But when I forget myself, get caught up in the outer world, have a limited awareness of self or false awareness of self, little flaws and cracks begin to appear on the jewel. That's part of my story. I understand that that happened, and it leads me to the door of the most beautiful moment in my journey through time. Healing the self, transforming the diamond of the self back to my original, perfect, whole state. This is the invitation of this time. Om Shanti. Thank you for joining.